This is the one I did your banner for.
Yes, you did. You did do my banner for Wild Passion, so I'm very thankful because I still have it on my Facebook page for my author. So I'm very appreciative of all your help. You're a wonderful lady. And yes, are you ready for me to talk about Wild Passion?
Please.
Okay, Wild
Tell
Passion
me about the
is
book.
a historical. Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's about a family. They've kind of moved into South Dakota territory. They're the first white settlement into the area of the Lakota Sioux. And but the Lakotas are aware of the white people, and they've heard bad things from other tribes that they're, not very conscientious of nature, and they're wasteful and things like this. So the war chief is kind of watching them, and they've decided they're bad because a few of their maidens have disappeared and never been found. So the chief is pretty sure someone in the settlement's doing it. So he's kind of watching to see, what they're about and stuff. And a family, the mother was lost on the trail, and the dad and the son kind of started drinking a lot to cope with it. And the girl is kind of taking care of her parents, but they've moved out of the settlement. They're the first people to kind of move away from the group. And so the two men go into town every day, and they're drinking and gambling all their money away. And so she's trying to provide for them without any help from the guy. So she's gathering, and she's trying to catch fish and things like that to put food on the table. And the Indian's kind of watching her. And he's really interested in her. He's never seen a white woman before, and he can't figure out why she's left all alone every day, because that's not the way it is in his tribe. So he's watching her, and he's watching the settlement. And one day there's a bad guy in the he's not bad. He's just a bad character. He's not very moral. And he really likes, Caitlin is her name. And her dad owes a lot of money to him. So finally, his name is Jed, talks Caitlin's dad into letting him marry her, but she has no idea. So the dad goes back home, tells Caitlin the great news, and she runs away. So Jed finds her in the night and is about to take what he thinks is his, and the Indian saves her, and Jed has hurt her, so she's like unconscious. She hit her head on a rock while she was trying to run away, and so she wakes up, and she thinks this warrior, she's really scared because she's heard bad things about Indians. So she thinks that he's saved her and that he's going to be taking her back home after she heals, because he takes her to her Indian village. But she doesn't know that once he saves her life that she is now his. She doesn't understand this because he's being really nice and generous. And there's the breach between the languages, so she's trying to learn a new culture and a new people and a new language, and she doesn't know what's going on. So it's kind of her adjustment, and then realizing that she's not free like she thought, and then the warring of the tribe with the white people a little bit, not hugely, but there's some war scenes in there.
Well, for a period piece, there would have to be some conflict, because everything wasn't all rosy and perfect back then.
Yes. There's definitely some killing that goes on. And so Jed kind of tries to track Caitlin down because he hates Indians. And so he actually gets captured also by the Indian, but he escapes. And so there's kind of this back and forth between the two of them until it comes to a head, which it does in the book.
That sounds very interesting, very period appropriate. And now, I see that you're a teacher. Does this mean you're a history teacher, or are you another?
No, that's the funny thing is I actually have a special ed degree and an administration degree, but I work with high functioning special needs students. So a lot of my teachers are like, we didn't even know they had a special ed problem or a disability. But I work with the reading and the writing deficit kids, so they may be a grade or two level behind or maybe more, but most of the time they might be really good in math. Some of them go to college, so they're very high functioning. A lot of them are attention disorder kids or mild behavior or something like that, where they just come to me basically for English or so in school I actually did not like history. But then after I graduated and, didn't have to learn history anymore, now I like it, certain parts of it. So I have to do a lot of research to make my writing accurate. So it is a lot of research. And then I do like living off the land in that kind of era. So I looked up a lot of natural medicines that the Indians might have used, and my grandparents kind of had a lot of information of home remedy type things. So that's where, there is a lot of hunting and gathering and just tribal life in the book. And so it's really, from a young child, I always was interested in cowboys and Indians, and even more the Indians and the hunting of the Indians. I'm not a hunter, but, it was neat to just see someone that used everything, wasn't wasteful, cared about the environment, praised the spirits of the trees and the plants and the animals that they took, was even honorable when they fought their enemies. So I just was very fascinated with that period.
Yeah, that time period is very intricate in American history, and a lot of times I find it either overlooked or misrepresented.
Yes, I agree. And I did pick a time that I could be more romanticized. It was more romanticized in my writing, where it wasn't where the white people were super invasive yet, so it was still kind of the Indians' domain before they were, so horribly annihilated or, treated so horribly. I like the period back when it's still Red Man's reign and, that kind of period.
Yeah,
but
I think the best movies that I can find that represent the time period would be like Dr. Quinn or the Love series. Those are the only two I can really find that has a romantic size time period within that area, but still mostly historically correct. Not all, but
yes,
mostly.
And I loved Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. That was, and I liked Little House on the Prairie, that kind of thing too. But yes, I agree with you. I really, really enjoyed that show when it was out. My first daughter's name is Michaela.
Aww.
But not necessarily for that reason. But I think that was one of the first times I ever heard that name.
I think that was the first time I heard it as well, and then later on became almost everyone has the name, and
yes.
You hear it. But
and then the second book, do you want me to talk about it, even though it's not out?
Please. No, go ahead. If you have, I'm sure the listeners want to hear about the sequel.
Okay, well, it's kind of a little bit of a spoiler alert because the first book, you're wondering, she wants to marry him and she finds out that she's a slave, and so she's torn. She loves him, but she knows that she isn't free, and how could he really love her? So she has this dilemma in the first book about, does he really truly love her, and will she ever be able to be his wife because she's white and she's not an Indian? And they are very into the Great Spirit, and so they do communicate with the Great Spirit a lot, and the Tribal Council approves whatever they ask, or denies. So do you want me to, it's kind of a spoiler alert for the first book to go into the second book? I'm sure it's a romance, so people know how it ends.
It's up to you how much you want to give away. I'm not going to say yes or no. It's up to you as the author. How much do you want to give away to the readers?
Well, I'll put it like this. I won't give away all of it. If they read the second book first, they would know how the first book ends. But they are together. She loves him. He loves her. And so they're having a gathering to celebrate their togetherness. And an enemy crow, he's actually half crow, half Lakota Sioux. He was kidnapped. His mother was Lakota, no, she was a Sioux Indian. It wasn't Lakota. It was a different tribe of Sioux. And so he wants his place back into Crow society, and he actually kidnaps Caitlin. So the second book is going to war with the Crow tribe to get her back. And they're trying to make, since he's a very powerful war chief and no one seems to be able to defeat him, they're trying to take away his honor. They have coups that they earn, and sometimes you can have your coups kind of, your power taken away from you, like if they put a coup on you. So like the big coup was stealing his woman away from his side beneath his very nose. And then so they think he's lost power, now they can defeat him. So that's what the second book is. It's kind of like the same type of book. She's in a new community again of Indians, and they do things differently, and they have a different language that she doesn't understand. But she does have someone in the tribe that speaks Lakota and can communicate with her and be kind of like a translator. Mhm.
That's always a good thing when you have a translator that can tell you what's going on, especially within the Native American tribes.
Yes, and I did, in the first book, I put a lot of Lakota into the book. I put a dictionary at the back, and I used the Lakota dictionary and sometimes an online translator if I couldn't find what I wanted. But I put, as I understood it, I don't speak fluent Lakota or anything. I did a lot of research, like I said, but I'll put like a word or a phrase in there that the Indians are saying when she's trying to learn it. So you can kind of put yourself in her shoes, what are they saying? And so there is some of that in there. And I think most of the people who read my book enjoy it, but it can be a little confusing, so that's why I put the dictionary at the back.
I will say this with the Native American languages, it's very difficult to read because a lot of the wording, there's not as many vowels or consonants, and they don't all sound the same. I'm trying to learn the Cherokee language, as that's my ancestors' tribe, and it's very, very hard to learn. Especially since I wasn't brought up reading it, it's very hard to get someone to teach me, especially in the area that I'm living at right now.
Do you have someone that's actually teaching you?
Unfortunately, the only teachers I have are online, and it's hit and miss when they're on.
I understand.
So they are out there.
Mine is.
It's just hard to get a hold of them.
Yes, and mine was self-instructed, so I'm sure I've made mistakes, but I did try to put a little, this is Lakota as I understand it, and I'm sorry if I've made mistakes. I did have the book on Wattpad before I published with Wild Passion Wild Dream. I'm mixing up everything. Yes, Wild Dreams. And I had some people who had some Indian background, and they're like, wow, you did a great job with, the language and the portrayal of things. So I like Wattpad because you get some feedback while you're writing it, and people can say, hey, this is right or this isn't right. Or, I like that part. I like feedback as I'm working. So I did get some feedback that way, and that's all I've really had because, again, I taught myself and I don't really, I don't know the language, but I tried to be very accurate based on my research.
It's great to get the feedback because without the feedback, all the research in the world doesn't really matter because you're not really sure if the research you're doing is 100% correct. So it's always
I
good
agree.
to get feedback, especially when you're going into a foreign language. And I'm going to say this, Native American languages are foreign languages unless you grew up speaking them. As a Native American, I wish I was grown up speaking or at least being taught some of the basics.
Yes, I agree with you. I think they even used, it might have been Sioux, but one of the wars to communicate, I think it was one of the world wars, they were using a Native American language to communicate with each other because all the other countries couldn't break the code. They couldn't understand our communications, which is a huge factor in the war. Oh, was it Vietnam?
Yeah. It was Vietnam.
Okay, I knew it was one of them, but
Navajo Code Talkers.
Okay.
And sadly, I believe the last one just passed away not too long ago.
Oh. Well, I thought that was very interesting when I read that, but obviously I've forgotten some of my information.
It's okay. No, it's something that a lot of people overlook. We've been using Native American languages in wars to get messages across the line since the Revolution. I'm sure most people don't understand that. The tribes were split down the middle during the Revolution. They were actually using Native American languages for both sides, back and forth, because the English, the Americans, the whatever, couldn't read it, couldn't understand it.
Mhm. I can see that because, like you said, it is hard to. It's hard unless you have some background in it.
But we've been using things like that since the creation of America, and I say that as a country, not the land itself. So I am very particular with that. But, okay. Is there anything else you would like to tell our listeners tonight about your books?
Well, I am going to be working on the third book after I get some of my anthologies written. I've committed to several that I need to get written. But the third book is going to be Caitlin journeying back to see her brother and father into the white community. So her man is still around and in the picture, but that's going to be the third book focus.
That sounds like an interesting thing. Go from being with the Native Americans for so long and then go back to just for a visit. I'm sure she's going to feel like an outsider looking in at that point.
Yes, and she still has to kind of keep it a secret that, she concocted a story that she's married to a white mountain man to avoid the bad feelings that people would have. Mm-hmm.
Well, we look forward to reading that, and you can find all your books on Amazon, as well as there's a link for getting to the Amazon page on the Wild Dreams website. And YM, our wonderful publisher, is great for keeping that updated for us.
Yes. Thank you so much, Melissa. This was great, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
Oh, you're welcome, Sheri. Anytime when you get the next book published and we have a publishing date, let me know and we'll pull you on and do a release party or something crazy.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I sure will, Melissa. Thank you.
You're welcome. And for this edition of Author Talk, I want to thank Sheri for being on the show. And we see you all next week.
All right. Bye-bye.
And we're out. Bye-bye. Bye.